So this is where we currently are, south coast of the UK on the River Hamble at Mercury Yacht Harbour. And our trips are split into two. We have our larger trips that we take once a year, and then this weekend radius which we use to make shorter trips. And these are some of the areas that we've covered, so the likes of Bewley, down towards Lymington and Hurst Castle. On the Isle of Wight side, Cowes down to Newton Creek, all the way out to Allen Bay, which we stayed in a couple of times. We've then jumped across towards Studland and Poole. Swanage has also been covered. Then round to Chapman's Pool and along to Warbarrow Bay. Heading east into Gosport and Portsmouth, and we've spent quite a bit of time in Chichester Harbour. And we've also covered areas such as Priory Bay. Any areas that we've not visited by a boat, we've visited in the car and had days out. Moving a little further afield, we've been to Weymouth and Portland Bill, and in our first season covered Torquay, Brixham and the River Dart. Heading south, we managed to cover Guernsey, Sark and Alderney, and that's really the problem now. Most of those short weekend trips are pretty much exhausted without us going back to the same place. So at the start of this year, we looked for a new home for Allegra. The south coast is quite easy to get to. It's some 200 miles from our house, but it's actually not a bad journey. So these were a couple of different options. However, we've sailed a lot of this area. If we start heading west along the south coast, this all gets very, very tricky to get to, in particular on a Friday night for a weekend. So all of this area is out. And unfortunately, the top half of sort of Bristol and Weston-super-Mare area is also very tricky for us to get to because of the M5. If we head in towards South Wales, this is not too bad, but again, it's still quite difficult. And the further west we go, the harder it gets. Mid Wales is not too difficult, however, there are no direct routes. As we start to get more towards Pwllheli and round to the North Wales area, this is a much easier route for us to take. Areas such as Carnarvon, Anglesey, Conway, Deganwy and even Liverpool are all actually quite easy to get to from our house. The further north we get, the more challenging it gets again, and we've spent some time up in the Lake District, so that's not an area we particularly want to go to just yet. So we started to make those inquiries in Wales, and basically all the marinas were full. There was absolutely no hope that we were going to get a berth until 2025. So I then called Haslar Marina at Gosport and managed to secure a berth there. I thought this would give us a little bit of a change and we could carry on exploring the south coast. Just as I was about to pay for that, Deganwy called and we're now secured a berth at Deganwy Marina. So that's where we're off to next. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the chart then and have a look at this trip. So as you can see at the moment, I've got the trip planned in and it's 488 miles. Now that's with a couple of other additional stops in that trip. Obviously, we're not going to go all the way around in one go. So our plan roughly, and again, I say roughly because all of these things change, but our plan is to basically come out of Mercury, out of the River Hamble, and our first stop is in Studland Bay. Catherine really wants to spend another night in Studland Bay before we go anywhere else, so that's going to be our first stop. Once we come out of Studland, we're going to kind of miss a chunk of this coast because we don't want to stop in anywhere here. We don't want to get too close to the bill because we know what that can be like and the timing. So we're going to come way down at this point and get across Lyme Bay. We don't want to really head to Torquay or anywhere there. So if anything, if the weather's not too good, we could drop into the River Dart or we could come a little bit further down here. But there is a bar here to try and go over if we wanted to come into this river at Salcombe. If not, as I say, the option would be to head to the River Dart and to wait there. So all being well, we want to get ourselves down to Plymouth and spend a night somewhere in Plymouth. I'm not quite sure where yet, but that's kind of the next target. So it'd be Studland to Plymouth. If we end up doing really well and we go a little bit further, then we could come over to this side. I think this is the River Fell. Yep. If we're doing well and we've got a bit of a weather window, we also want to have a holiday as well. So it'd be nice to stop here and then sort of hop our way down. So this is another option. We then want to come round the corner and we want to have a look at St Michael's Mount. So we want to sort of stay here or in Newlyn on this side of the coast here. So that's going to be another trip. Now again, depending, the islands over here, the Scillies, we'd really like to visit them. So if we can, we're going to try and make it across to them. If not, we're going to have to just sort of come straight out here. And the next stop for us, hopefully, will be Milford Haven. I don't think we're going to head to Lundy. it means coming back up the coast quite a way. But again, depending on the weather, it could be an option. We could sort of make our way back up. The other option is stopping somewhere in St Ives here, but I've heard, again, sort of things about the swell coming into the bay. So I'm not 100% sure we're going to stop there. But the plan at the moment is to come round the corner and then head straight for Milford Haven. Now, there's a couple of islands off Milford Haven that we'd like to take a look at. These two islands here. There's a little bay here that you can stop in, and there's also a bay this side. So again, just depending on the weather, that would be a nice stop for an overnight there and explore those islands. Also want to just do a little bit around Milford Haven. And then the next stop is to come up past St David's and then head in Cardigan Bay towards Abersoch or Pwllheli. And we'll probably spend a night or two here and just sort of have a bit of a breather before we then make another jump. Not planning on exploring much of this coast this time, rather spend my time a little bit further down if we have the opportunity. So this is where we would stop at Pilot's Cove, somewhere here. This is a nice little bay and would be the kind of the first sort of North Wales stopping point after we've come round from either Pwllheli or Abersoch. And then we're just a bit unsure about what we're going to do, whether we're going to head over the bar and through the straits. Obviously, we have to time this with a high tide because the bar gets extremely shallow. And then the other thing we've got is when we get further down here through the Menai Straits, we've got the bridges to deal with here, the swellies. So again, we want a high tide. I have been through there, but it's a long time ago. So we will want a nice high tide, so we don't want the current travelling in any direction, because as you can see, it's very, very narrow in places here, and it absolutely flies through there. So in a sailboat, we need to go through on slack tide and high tide for us. So haven't looked at all the timings of that bit. If not, then what we might do is, if the weather again is still playing ball, we might go round Anglesey, stop at Holyhead, and there's a couple of nice bays at the top here. It'd be nice to go and see them before kind of making our final sort of pass of Puffin Island. And then again, another high tide required here to get into the River Conway and across to Diganway. So if you look, this part of this dries, it dries here again. Again, absolutely flies through this bit. So again, we need a high slack tide to get through there. So it needs to be preferably going in, so on a flood, and then we'll just follow that in. And as you can see here, there is a sill to enter the marina, and also we need tide to get across this little bit of a sandbank that's here. So that's the plan when we get to that sort of stage. But again, we can wait out here somewhere off Puffin Island, or we can just make slow progress along this bit, wait for that tide to start to flood, and then going on the flood. So that is the journey. Here's the weather at the moment. We're way too far forwards to sort of plan this. We're over 2 weeks early at this stage, so again, the weather's just not accurate at that point. But again, sort of looking at it, right down the coast, round the corner, up to South Wales, up again, and then round, and we're there. So that's the plan, but we've just got to keep an eye on the weather and just see how far we can get. If we can't make it, our plan is to get at least to Milford Haven. If we can get to Milford Haven, then we've cracked it. We can then do another jump at some other time when the weather improves, but hopefully we'll get as far around as we possibly can. But as I say, just at the moment, it's way too far in front to start even looking at weather windows. It does look like it's improving, although if you look out the window today, it's absolutely throwing it down and not particularly nice. So yeah, we just got to see what we can do. But yeah, really looking forward to the trip. Again, sort of this area we've wanted to visit for a while, so we'd like to spend some time here. We'd like to spend some time here. We'd love to spend some time down here. And then from that point, it's just a case of getting round in a manageable way.